Alright, hello, welcome to the Maneaters tutorial now, and after the Fool's Idol. If you would like to know how to get through Fool's Idol with the speedrun method of using the dagger and turpentine, the fire buff, and cleverette, check this video out. Otherwise, we are now going on to Maneaters, and we'll do Old Monk after this as well, in the next video. Where you're going to need to prep for this is to free Sage Frake. You will need his services for Soul Ray as well. Soul Ray is actually a fairly high damage way to kill this boss, even though he is supposed to be magic resistant. So it stock together with like Cleverette's ring, and if you want it and you have it, magical sharpness is also good, but not necessary. At least on like in the 80% speedrun. But this will be two things you need, mostly Soul Ray and like Cleverette's if you want to fight him with that. You don't have to, I suppose, if you want to be safer. But it is pretty quick kill with the Soul Ray. Once you get it down, it's kind of not the worst ever. But because the Maneaters are definitely a buggy boss, honestly, probably worse than the original in my opinion. It could be troublesome, but it's not the worst ever, in my opinion, at least. You may also want a decent supply of fresh spice so you can restore some mana. There's definitely a couple times where you'll need it, pretty much mandatory, to kill the boss. And the speedrun usually have like around 17, 16 or so by now, but you'll probably only need around 5 or 6 minimum, but you know, for the rest of the playthrough you might want more. Alright, as I tend to do, I will first show how to do the boss fight properly, a successful attempt of it basically, and then explain it afterwards. Just so you can have an idea to how to fight this before we actually try to learn it. Killing the first Maneater quickly before the second arrives is pretty crucial to being safe. So I would recommend doing that if possible. It's definitely more reliable in Cleverette's ring range as opposed to full HP, but do try to make sure you're ready to kill him off. I'll explain that a little bit more later. And there you go. As you can see, this fight was somewhat fine. They didn't fly off. Flying off is definitely one of the big time losses that can happen, but if you're not focused purely on speedrun, you can just wait them out, heal up with the fresh spice or whatever. For the next fight, you will need the Moon Short Sword. I'll discuss that in the next video as well. But, you know, you pick it up, and then Full Moon Grass is here. It's pretty nice. But yeah, now let's go on to how to fight it. Before I show you how to fight this boss, there's a quick little tip on how to reset the fight. If you die, you can actually just hit the PS menu and forcefully close the game. And by doing so, you will actually be reset to basically before you cross the floodgate. Your HP will be restored to where it was. If you're in Cleverette ring range, you'll keep that. If you're at full health, you'll keep that. And any consumables you used during the fight itself will also be replenished. So this is just a easy way to get back to the fight without having to run back, and just practice over and over basically. So I didn't do it the most cleanly in that example, but that's basically how you do it. You just, as soon as you die, quickly try to close the game, and actually has some leeway, so it's not a big deal if you don't hit it right away. Okay, so you might have noticed that there's a lot of magic spam with Soul Ray. As said, this is like your main tool for the fight. However, it's not actually spam, so like this is what happens if you just spam, you know, sometimes you mindlessly do it, you're gonna get dived at. So I wouldn't recommend doing that necessarily, but you do use this magic a lot, but you have to be fairly calculated about it. So this will be a little more of a calculator approach. So you can definitely get 2 or even maybe in 3 if you want to risk it, magic hits on him before the fight if you run up to him a little bit. But after that, you want to be a lot more careful by creating more space between you two. Walking back is an easy way to do it. You should still be aware that he can still dive at you sometimes. So this isn't a foolproof method by any means of using it. It's just how you want to risk it. You will learn as time goes on, like when he staggers like there, you can definitely take advantage of that. But if he keeps walking at you, there's a possibility he'll dive. I would recommend trying this just at full health a lot, seeing how he reacts, getting a feel for it, and also just how the spacing works, because there's definitely like a sweet spot of like, if you're this close, you'll probably try to attack you with a dive or magic or something, but if you're further than that, he might just keep walking at you. There's also always a chance of dives too, so definitely practice a lot just so you can get a feel for it. It's a fairly reliable way to fight him 90% of the time if he doesn't misbehave, and as long as he's on the ground, etc. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to punish the melee attacks he does, like the dive and like the punches he does. The first one you saw there, the dive, you ideally want to roll through the attack and, you know, be ready to turn around and fire again. That's a pretty easy way to punish the dive. You can also use a fresh spice instead of casting a spell at him if you're running pretty low or you're going to need more. And as far as the other melee attacks, the two-handed little flight he does to punch you with both hands, and then the one-handed punch, you can pretty easily just strafe it backwards. If you're too close, if you're just right up to the boss, you may want to roll instead. But if you know you're far away enough and you have the mana for it, you can definitely just strafe back and then just cast again. As you can see, whenever you're on even ground with the Maneaters, his magic explosion attack isn't his best option for attacking you. Even if you stand still or we walk back a little bit, he just can't hit you. So I'm guessing it might be like a slight program error where like his hitbox is just slightly too close to the ground or something whenever he's uneven flooring. So yeah, you're mostly safe. As you can see here, you can actually just kind of like walk away from a lot of things too. So, however, if he's actually on high ground than you or flying, it is actually a very dangerous attack. At that point, you should definitely roll through it. So just watch out where he's standing whenever he casts that attack. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit of how I fight the boss. Some people vary between their lock on and lock off. The free aim of this game is actually pretty good, so you can fight him unlocked, but I will usually lock on if I don't feel like manually doing. However, I personally lock on a fair amount, especially if he's close. If he's too far away, you actually can lock on. So as you can see there, though, one downside is that there is a fair bit of hitbox porn in this game sometimes, so the sword can definitely go through his like tail or something, or just like he can just dodge it. So that's one downside. However, he's pretty close and he's not doing anything weird. He's just kind of punching or something. It's fairly reliable to just lock on. Also, if I want to particularly go for the tail for one reason or another, which I'll explain a little bit later, I'll usually lock on for sure. Just he has the body and then the tail both have a lock on. So if you particularly want to hit the tail at any point, you can definitely do that. In Clever Rat ring range, it takes 2 hits to cut it without the magic sharpness ring, and I think 1 with the ring. And then if you're not using either of those, it's probably gonna take 3 or 4 depending. But as you can see, you can definitely fight it mostly with lock on if you're close enough. I wouldn't recommend really hitting him while he's flying most of the time, because especially if you're in Clever Rat, because definitely can be buggy. But if you just need to finish him off, feel free. Okay, and now for unlocked fighting. Just for reference, I'm going to show you a reticle in the middle of the screen, just to have a reference of roughly where the soul ray can go. You can actually control soul ray with the camera a lot more than you could in the other games. I think in the original Demon Souls, the cast was kind of tied to where your character was facing. You don't really have control over it outside of the character's facing, but with the camera in this game, you can actually kind of manipulate where it goes. But it'll still be like, you know, very centered to your screen, more or less. So obviously you can't lock on to him if he's too far away, so one way people will usually try to do is like unlock for the first couple hits if he's far away, or if he just goes too far away from you and you want to take advantage of spacing, you will definitely shoot him unlocked. Soul Ray has a pretty good travel. It's not infinite by any means, but it's pretty far, and you can take advantage of it from long range. With this, you're less likely to encounter some hitbox porn, so that's pretty good if you don't want to deal with that. But yeah, it's pretty handy to use unlocked range in this game. So if you want to go for that, feel free. And then lastly, I want to show how I usually manage the tail. For the first one, if the first Maneater reaches boss, I want to say 10% of his HP or so. The second one will come. It's both time. It can be both time or damage based. So if you're quick, you'll definitely just be around 10%. So what I do usually is I try to get the tail, so I have a guaranteed stun from him. Because if you cut the tail, he's stunned for a couple seconds, and you can definitely like get another hit in. So I usually want to have the tail cut just as the second one's about to come, so I can finish off the first one. And the second one you can just do however you like. So yeah, I think that's it pretty much. It's definitely gonna be hard like for a little while until you get it down to fight this boss. So I would just recommend like putting all these pieces together, focus on spacing, don't get too greedy. That's a big one for this boss. If you're in clever at ring range, specifically, if you get greedy, it's pretty much death. Unless if it's super calculated, he's about to die and you know you can cast off your spell before him. For the magic route especially, this is definitely the hardest fight, I would say. Or up there at least. Especially, definitely for early game, it's definitely the hardest. But he's very much doable. In my opinion, even in the original, he was, like from the 3 really bad bosses, like Maker, Maneaters, and Old King Alant, he was the most manageable, less RNG heavy if you knew how to manipulate him. One additional tip, make sure that he's not facing away from the bridge. So if say he's on the center of the bridge, don't get next to him to where he would like dive off. Try to be like just kind of parallel to the bridge, so he will always, even if he dives or something, he will most likely stay on the bridge. That's one of the easiest ways to manipulate him to like not fly off. It's not foolproof, he'll still sometimes do it just on his own, but it definitely helps a lot with manipulating him. I would definitely recommend practicing this boss a lot, because if you're doing proper speedruns, this will be one of the walls for sure. Even though I got fairly good at fighting Maneaters in the original, like I said earlier, they're definitely a little bit buggier than they used to be in some ways, and it's made it a little bit tough for me to adjust a little bit, but I'm getting there. It's definitely one of my ronculars still sometimes, but I'm getting there. Alright, but yeah, next up we're going to go to Old Monk, and that will be the last video for this small little series, unless people want more of a specific fight or something, or an area, and it hasn't been covered by anyone else. I will make more, but next time, Old Monk.